I'm here with Kaitlin Sopoci Belknap, who is the National Director of Move to Amend, a group that I served on. She was my director, and I can tell you one thing that's very important. This woman means business. I don't know where she gets the energy from, but she kept, I think the word they used was she kept all the cats together in line doing what we needed to do. Welcome to Politics Done Right. Kaitlin, how are you doing today?
Thank you, Egberto. Today I'm doing good. Happy May Day.
Happy May Day. When you told me, "Oh, it's May Day," I'm sleeping late today. I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're just doing the right thing." Okay. So how have you been? I haven't spoken to you in a long time.
I'm doing pretty well. I mean, my health is good right now, which we'll talk about in a sec. That is relevant. And Move to Amend is blowing and going. Our amendment was reintroduced in this new Congress in
Let me
February.
stop you right there and ask you because most of our audience are not gonna know what Move to Amend is. So first of all, tell me what is Move to Amend.
Move to Amend is a national campaign to amend the U.S. Constitution to do two things. One, to make clear that only human beings have constitutional rights as opposed to corporations, and also that money is not speech, so that we can regulate campaign spending and actually get money out of politics.
And why is that so important?
Well, I mean, it really connects to everything, right? So, one, the money in politics is just drowning out people's voices and making it so that the policies that Americans want to see are not what Congress is putting in place, because instead they're listening to billionaires and corporate funders because that's really who keeps them in office. And then, kind of underneath that, and we think more systemically, is the fact that corporations are able to claim constitutional rights, which allows them to take any legislation or regulation that we're able to pass to limit their behavior that is causing harm, and to get it overturned in court under the claim that it violates their constitutional rights. So it connects to money in politics because they also have First Amendment rights, which is why corporations are able to contribute money. But it also connects to, trying to ensure that we have local economies that are strong, that policies to protect workers are not put in place, public health policies. I mean, really, the reality is that any policy is vulnerable to corporations overturning it kind of in collusion with the Supreme Court and the judicial system. And so anything we pass is at risk of being overturned. So, the way we talk about it is that we basically live in a system of corporate rule, and we're not able to implement policies to help everyday Americans because they have to be vetted through corporations, either through this political process where they control our politicians, or even if we're able to get things past the legal system that serves corporate interests over people's interests.
Kaitlin, recently, tell us a little bit about your health situation because this ties in perfectly with the reasons for Move to Amend and all these other organizations that are trying on the grassroots level to make sure that our politics reflect what we really need.
Yeah. So, well, I think maybe what makes sense to start with is yesterday. So yesterday was April 30th, and it was the last day that I have healthcare. I don't have healthcare today. My husband was recently let go from his job, and we lost our healthcare. And yesterday was our last day, and there was the hearing in Congress for the first time on Medicare for all, and it was something that was already on my mind. And I saw an interview that Alyssa Milano did talking about the presidential election. And she was talking about how what's most important is that we beat Trump and the policies really should come second. And, that really just hit me because I'm going to be voting for the candidates that are supporting Medicare for all and these other policies that are critical for our survival as a species on this planet, but also, our everyday lives. And the reason, I mean, I've not had healthcare before in the past, but the reason why it matters more right now is that I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer 3 years ago. And it was completely out of the blue. There's no family history that I have of it, totally unexpected. And honestly, the only reason why I went to the doctor was because for the first time in my adult life, I actually had health insurance. I through my husband's work, he worked for a union, and so we were incredibly lucky to have very good health care, which is not something that even most Americans who are insured through their work can necessarily claim. But we had, top of the line healthcare, and I had this pain in my abdomen, which honestly, again, like all through my 20s, when I was going to like the, open door clinic for my healthcare, I wouldn't have gone to the doctor for quite some time before I had like a lot more pain. But, we had just moved to Sacramento, and I figured, well, I should go to the doctor because I can. So I did. And long story short, it turned out that there was a mass, and they assured me that, I'm too young to, have it be cancerous. It was probably benign, but they needed to remove it. But then it turned out that it was cancerous. And I was incredibly lucky in that it was caught early, and it was sort of resting on my bladder, which is why I could feel it. And ovarian cancer is the number 2 killer of women who have cancer because it's very hard to catch it early. Most of the time, by the time it is caught, it has spread. But I was a 1 in a million case, honestly, in that they were able to remove all of it through my surgery. And I didn't have to do chemo. And that was 3 years ago, and I have been cancer-free ever since. But I have needed to go every 3 months to get an ultrasound and some blood work to make sure that it's, not come back. And I'm supposed to do that for 5 years. And then after that, I will need to keep doing it, but at a less frequent interval. So I have 2 years left, but now I don't have any health insurance. And when we were looking at, coming on to Covered California, I live in California, to see if we could continue it, it's $600 a month for a plan that allows me to go to the doctor 3 times a year and doesn't cover lab work. I don't, I do there's some of this is some choices on my part, right? I'm college educated. I could have a job at, some corporation or something like that, or a union myself, and maybe have my own health insurance. But I have chosen to orient my life around my activism and this work for Move to Amend because I feel like that's critically important. And my husband was supporting me by being the one to provide the health care. And so some people are not even, in a position to even have any of that on the table. They have to have, minimum wage jobs where there isn't any health care available whatsoever, and both members of the household. So I recognize that. And the reality is that the reason why I didn't die from ovarian cancer was because I had amazing health care, and I was able to go to the doctor and catch it early. I mean, part of it was, just luck of the universe in terms of the way the tumor was growing. But some of it was, if I hadn't had that insurance, I wouldn't have gone to the doctor in time, and it would have killed me, or at least I would have had to have, a very traumatic chemo and, recovery and all of that, which is what most women with ovarian cancer have to do. So anyways, as we're looking at our finances and, we have a mortgage, we try to live, frugally, but we both have some debt. We are, normal people.
Regular, average, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's a modest car, but, and I can't add $600 a month. I don't know where that would come from, and so what we elected to, and actually that wouldn't really cover what I need. It's $980 a month for the plan that would allow me to have the blood work every 3 months and the ultrasound every 3 months. And so really that's what we're talking about. The 600 is sort of like what somebody maybe who didn't have a history of cancer could get away with. So we decided that for now we're not in a position, and we're going to try and rearrange our finances. I mean, the reality is that we're actually separated. We have 2 different households, but we're still married because we're still friends. And there's a lot of people that are in these kinds of situations. And honestly, the reason why we're still married is because of the healthcare piece. And luckily, he is a very he's still my best friend in many ways. He's a very supportive person. He's still my family. But there are women who are in abusive relationships that they stay in so that they can, have health care. or so that their children can have health care. I mean, it is crazy, the situation that we're in. So seeing Alyssa Milano just sort of cavalierly say the only thing, I mean, of course, Trump is terrible and Trump isn't moving us in the right direction in terms of healthcare, but there are candidates in the presidential primary who are supporting Medicare for all, and there are candidates that Alyssa Milano is supporting right now, Joe Biden, who actively have worked against Medicare for all. And there are millions of people who are uninsured because they can't afford healthcare. And so it just really hit home and it really upset me. And so I retweeted that interview that she did and made a comment. And I'm pretty new to Twitter, but just sort of
That's amazing.
was like people were liking it and retweeting it. And I was like, this must be really resonating. I don't really, because I was so lucky, I don't actually have to daily think about I'm a cancer survivor. I don't even really talk about it that way because what I had to survive, at least up until this point, has been relatively limited in the trauma compared to many, many people who have cancer. I mean, I did have to have surgery and I had a scary 2 weeks where I thought for sure I was going to need to do chemo and, it was very upsetting. And then I had some other health issues that came from the surgery. I had an autoimmune disease that showed up and rheumatoid arthritis, and that's not a small thing at all. That, completely messed up my life for a year and a half until I figured out how to
deal with it
without medication. But that's the other thing. Luckily, I found that, through diet, I'm able to address my inflammation. But most people who have autoimmune diseases and, lots of people have rheumatoid arthritis and it's debilitating. And, I couldn't work for a while. And so people get on medication. That was what, I was supposed to do and did do for a little while, but it didn't really work for me. So I would be in the position right now if that had been the path that I had, ended up down, where I would be losing my insurance. And then we would have had to find the $600 somewhere,
because you would have needed. Now, it's interesting because Alyssa Milano is showing one stage of privilege. In other words, and believe it or not, there are a whole lot of folks that claim to be progressive and that they only see things through that tunnel vision. What's interesting enough is that one of the other problems with healthcare, Kaitlin, is that at any given time, maybe 5-10% of people are really going to see doctors and that sort of thing. So they cannot see they're so tunnel vision that they can't see the picture that could be them. And that is one of the reasons why your story is so important and so impactful, because we need to be able to show folks, regular average citizens like yourself, that's just out there like you and me, it can happen to any one of us no matter what our situation is. So that is important. Now, Medicare for All, explain to folks what Medicare for All would do in your situation, make your situation better.
Well, it would mean that we wouldn't have the private insurance piece. And so we would be paying for our insurance still, but, through our taxes. And which, I already pay a good amount. My taxes actually went up thanks to Trump, because again, my husband had a union job, but we're separated, so our finances are, so I make, about $45,000 a year, which is not very much to be living in a city, and I have luckily paid off all my college debt, but I had a lot of college debt.
Right.
And people, I'm going to be 40 this year, but if I were a little bit younger, I would have a very large, tuition payment that I would still be paying as well if I was, in the same situation. And so anyways, what it would do is it would make it so that, we don't have to work through Kaiser or Anthem or Blue Cross or whatever. It is provided by the government. And, most first world countries use this healthcare model. And, that doesn't mean that it is perfect for everyone every time. But what was also so, just really hit me is the number of people who responded to my tweet yesterday talking about their situation and, medication. One woman talked about how her son, who has a minimum wage job, doesn't make enough money to pay for medication that he needs. And so she has an extra job and she uses, and I didn't get the sense that she was somebody who necessarily is really, should be of working age, like should be headed towards retirement because she has an adult son. who she's supporting so that he can get his medication. So she has a job, and all of the money from her job goes to, pay for his medication. So these kinds of things would just be, irrelevant. They wouldn't be part of the story. And, people in Great Britain, people in Canada, people in France, people in the Netherlands,
Taiwan, Japan,
stories.
Israel, who we consider one of our biggest allies. They have socialized medicine and the entire thing, but they're okay. But our citizens can't have it. I mean, it is so important. What we have to, what is the other thing? Let's get off of Medicare for all for one little thing, because I think we have to first let a whole lot of folks, let's say in these red states, and I know you do a lot of work in red states as well, with Move to Amend. These people don't realize that these politicians are screwing them. For those who don't have the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act, which you have in California, they don't understand that their own politicians, for all practical purposes, are committing legal murder. And what I say to our side, or progressives, etc., is that we have to start being able to articulate in the manner that they articulate to their people, to convince them to do the things, to vote against your own interests, to support policies against your own interests. What are you doing in that regards to with your organization?
With Move to Amend, you mean?
Yes.
Not around healthcare. Well, I mean, the thing is,
well, I like to talk about Move to Amend with regards to healthcare as well, right? Because I mean, the reality is, if you are successful, we will get the policies that we need.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's part of why it's really important that there's these policies, and then there's the legal system that will make it either possible for us to actually have the policies, or will hinder our ability to implement the policies. So, and what I mean by that is, when we do pass Medicare for all, and single payer, and this new system, right now there's nothing to stop the insurance industry from suing our federal government and saying that this new policy violates their constitutional rights. And we don't know what kind of exact argument they will make, but they will. Argument. They will,
yes.
Do it probably on the First Amendment and potentially on the Fifth Amendment, saying that their right to profits is a takings and the government needs to pay them for that. And so the only way that we're actually going to be a critical piece of moving Medicare for all forward needs to be changing the Constitution so that corporations don't have constitutional rights.
Exactly.
Thwart our progress towards protecting Americans, and making it so that we can actually take care of our health. And, and this is true not just of, healthcare. This will be true in terms of passing the Green New Deal. This would be true in terms of raising the minimum wage high enough to actually, be a wage that would allow people to support themselves. I mean, when cities have tried to do this, corporations have sued them and said that those, minimum wage elevations have, violated their constitutional rights. And so there's a structural issue underneath the policies. And we have to understand that, because first they try to get it with, our politicians. But if that doesn't work, then they have other mechanisms available to them. That's how corrupt our system is. And that's why we have to address it at the foundational level. And in terms of, conservative states or red states, I mean, the reality is that most Americans, it doesn't matter what their politics are, want to see Medicare for all happen. And that's why, when Bernie Sanders would do a town hall with Fox, he would be able to, completely win over the audience, at least on this issue and a number of other ones, which is also why I get so frustrated at this idea that we have to support some kind of neoliberal who is advocating policies that are actually against the best interests of everyday Americans. And a lot of people understand that, which is why they don't want to vote for a Joe Biden or a Hillary Clinton, and didn't last time. And, and these people are not necessarily all progressives.
And
right?
what is ironic is, and this, I Daily Kos, I wrote an article that got me sliced in as many pieces as at my age, I guess. But I mean, as it turned out, I predicted that Donald Trump was going to win, and what I said is Donald Trump was going to win by going to our left flank, and that is exactly what Donald Trump did. Many people look at Donald Trump as this great Republican who won. Donald Trump won by expounding not democratic, but progressive policies. I'm going to give you the best healthcare system. I'm going to make you. You're going to have so much work. You're going to be. But we talk about narrative a whole lot, right? If you take a look, when we talk, we talk it. We say we're going to have basic income, right? He says, I'm going to have so much work for you. You're going to say, please, no more, no more, no more. When we say we're going to give you Medicare for all, he says, all of you are going to love your health care and you're going to. The guy is mimicking our policies in a grassroots way that people believe. We have to be able to do that in such a manner. And not only that, we have to be able to say it's not Joe Biden that's going to be our savior.
No, I mean, Joe Biden and the Democratic Party were in power for, for most of my adult life.
16 years.
Right. And here I am. I have no insurance right now.
Yes.
I can't afford to get it. I'm going to have to majorly adjust my life, which is already on the margins, in order to go get this test, that I need in 3 months. Or delay it. And
don't you dare delay it. If you have to go ahead and put a thing on Facebook, you better do it.
Well, I won't delay it more than like a month or two, just to be clear. I understand that health is most important, and I appreciate all the well wishes that I've already gotten from folks who have, told me. I mean, I had friends who saw what I was doing yesterday and, messaged me and said, like, do you need money? And that's the other thing. It's like I have a community to support me. I have a network. What about people who don't?
That is what Kaitlin.
Because that's what's happening.
That is what people don't understand. We shouldn't have to depend on people who you have a network because you are a known national figure. How many people can have that claim? Very few.
Right. Yeah, and it's not fair. It's not fair at all. And these people are, just as good people as me, just as deserving as me, just as deserving as people like Alyssa Milano, who, or whoever. So, but to go back to, because I think that one of the things that's happening that I'm seeing a lot of is this, is people blaming progressives for Trump and saying that, if we had voted for Hillary Clinton more, that she would have won. I don't think that we should help feed into that narrative at all, because the reality is if Hillary Clinton had been able to turn out Democrats in the numbers that Obama was able to turn out Democrats. And why did Obama turn out so many Democrats? Because Obama promised policies that he didn't deliver.
Right. Exactly right.
Because people didn't know him, and because he said it in a way that sounded compelling, and people were excited to vote for a Black president and thought that, maybe that in and of itself would be so different that he would also follow through on all the other ways he was setting himself apart with his rhetoric. That is what people turned out for. And Hillary Clinton didn't even try. And if she had, when she did, it fell short, because how could you possibly believe that Hillary Clinton, when her family was responsible for most of the policies that had set us so far back economically, was going to deliver any of that? And so most people, so the number of people who stayed home, who were unwilling, far outweighs, people who voted for a third party candidate or progressives who voted for Trump. There are no progressives who voted for Trump. If you're progressive, you don't vote for Trump. That's not a thing. But there are these swing people who care about economics, who are not bought into Trump's white nationalist agenda. They're not on board for that, but they are on board for a populist agenda, which is why we have to have the Democratic Party nominee be a populist.
Thank you. That, in a nutshell, that part alone I've got to cut out, because people have to understand that concept exactly. And you know what?
Time right now, nothing will. I think these people who think that we have to get rid of Trump, need to get off of the Biden train, because I think the only thing that can beat Trump is a populist. That is so clearly, people are so hungry. They are so opposed to establishment. And for good reason. The establishment has completely let us down. It is a failure. The system is a failure. I mean, also, we aren't even talking about climate change, but, we have 12 years and that's optimistic. And we have, Biden saying that he doesn't even support something like, a Green New Deal or even, stopping emissions or anything that will save us. And we're supposed to, if we were to somehow or other end up with Biden as president, which I think is actually impossible. I think that
that's not a possibility. I don't really think. I put it this:
Trump wins.
I do not.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't see him making it out of the primaries. Okay, I don't. I think he's going to fizzle.
I hope so, but right now you have the people with the microphones telling us that trying to shame us. Saying that, we don't, we're racist if we're not willing to, vote against Trump, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're in a dangerous situation.
I want to tell you where we are, Kaitlin. I want to tell you where we are. I didn't give up a company to do complete progressive media because I thought we were losers. And Tim Black didn't give up his company because he thought we were losers. All these new progressive people that are doing this type of media now understand that the mainstream media is not going to be there for us. They are right in the camp with Biden. But what we are going to do is using all our networks, your network, because you have a network. All of these progressive organizations that want populists have networks. What we have to do together is combine our efforts into a network that amasses the people. And that is what we haven't done to date. What we've done has been too factional. And what we have to do is go beyond factionalism. Even, in other words, there are a lot of things that progressive groups have done that's wrong. And that is, I don't like what you're doing, so I don't collaborate with you. I don't like what you're doing, so I don't. And one of the things that I am trying to fix in my domain is saying, I don't have to agree with my progressive brothers and sisters in X, Y, and Z. You're my progressive brothers and sisters, and we're going in the same direction, and we're going to collaborate, and we're going to raise this whole thing up. So, no, I'm not going to be defeatist, and I'm not going to give those guys a chance to take over without a fight.
Well, I definitely agree with your optimism. I do think that we are in a moment, I think there's a lot more possible right now than there was in 2016. I mean, one example, again, to sort of tie it back is I've actually never voted for a Democrat in the Democratic primary. I have never been a Democrat. I am an independent now. I have historically been a Green because, and if I had lived in a...
Trust me, I remember being the only Democrat or one or two Democrats in our executive meetings.
Right. Well, but yes, and I was an elected official as a Green. I still very much believe in independent parties as essential. I mean, if we hadn't had an independent party, Bernie Sanders wouldn't be talking about Medicare for all.
Right. I agree.
Like there's so I'm not sorry in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I was a delegate for Bernie in Philly. Okay, so there you go.
Right. Well, and the other thing too, and I'll just say it here, is that Bernie Sanders needs to support the We the People amendment. And so far, he hasn't. And
what about Elizabeth?
Nobody in the Senate has introduced our amendment, and
we're
working on that. But Bernie Sanders, in particular, we have had some conversations with his office, and they could have gone better. I'll just say. And so, that's the thing is, like, on one hand, yes, the progressives, we need to band together and not be factionalists just for that sake. But on the other hand, we do need to have a vision and an agenda. And we need to make sure our candidates are moving it forward. And if they're not, we need to hold them accountable.
I agree 100%.
Sure that our organizations are not undermining each other. Because the reality is that, you know this, Egberto, we've been working at Move to Amend for 10 years on the systemic solution. And a number of organizations in Washington, D.C., the sort of beltway, cynical NGOs have been, working against us, I would say.
Right.
Proposing policies that are lesser and pitching them to the grassroots as if they will do more than they really will do. And we can't have that sort of faux systemic change. That's inadequate, and also that siphons people away from us. It confuses people, and also it makes, people want. I mean, that's part of why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is so popular, because she is a populist, and also she's a visionary. And Bernie Sanders can claim that as well. And that is what people want. People do not want someone who's going to sell them one thing and then do another thing. And they're so quick to, any hint of that, and they're gone, because it's our lifetimes where that has been what politicians have done, and people are too smart for that at this point.
And
so we can't do that at all, ever.
Ocasio-Cortez also is owed to nobody. Ilhan Omar is owed to nobody. Rashida Tlaib is owned by nobody, and that just show to put your what the work that you do in context. Look at the freedom a politician has when they're owed to nobody. When in effect they're practicing what Move to Amend wants.
Right. That's absolutely true. And that's the reality of why some organizations are willing to push for a system, because we're owed to nobody either. We don't have wealthy billionaires who have foundations that are giving us funds that we need to sort of make sure aren't going to rock the boat in terms of what we're proposing, And so, yes, that's what we need from our politicians. That's what we need from our movement organizations. And when we have that it's like, I don't want to say purity because that brings to mind the wrong thing, but when we have that honesty,
that honest vision,
people respond to that, and that is how movements can grow exponentially. And I think you're right in terms of the optimism, but I also don't want to underestimate these billionaires who are on a suicide death march at this point, I think, because why else would they be hoarding everything at the expense of even their own children now?
Pitchforks, baby. Pitchforks, baby. Pitchforks, baby.
Yes, every day I was looking through the Twitter feed, and I'm feeling like, gosh, I get the French Revolution on a level I've never did before. But we have to be careful. That's the danger. When people are so angry, then a nationalist populist like Trump can win. And, if he wins again, or if a Biden type neoliberal wins and we have maybe 4 years of sort of there's nothing that he will be able to offer to actually help anyone. So
nothing would change. We'll just get worse slower.
Because climate disasters will have, people are just, every single one of these climate disasters, once the media goes away, people's still there with their lives devastated. Jessica, you should have her on your show too. Egberto, she is from Paradise. That's where she grew up.
Please connect us.
Yes, well, Jessica is our program director for people listening. And she was just back home. She lives in LA now, and she was just back home and just talking about, people are still living in tents. People who are renters who don't have any insurance money to rebuild their homes. The insurance company is trying to foreclose on her mother's land. There is no house there. She actually paid off her mortgage when she got her insurance fund, and something got missed in the paperwork. They're trying to foreclose on her non-existent home. She has to be on the phone 5 hours a day. And that's the same thing that happens with people with their insurance companies too. It's like the stress of the situation that we're in is so deep and is affecting people so horribly that
Kaitlin,
let me just finish my one point.
Yeah.
If we end up with a Biden and we have 4 more years of that, then I am terrified at the fascist who will then become the president after that.
Wow.
You can't let it happen.
You took that out. I was about to. That is what I was about to address when with you coming with that point, and then I was about to also say, well, that is why we have to be successful, because and then you went ahead and answered the damn question.
Yes, I really do feel like it's do or die, and the reality is with climate change, it's not just about American politics in the do or die. It's a do or die for Americans. It's do or die for this planet, and so that's why I will make sure to get my test, because I'm going to be here for this revolution that we have to have. And we need everybody on board. And so I hope that folks will join Move to Amend. One of the things that's challenging is that with all the urgency and the candidates and the fact that everyone, is subsumed by this election, the issues that are actually more systemic, that are more long-term in terms of their solutions, but are desperately needed and are urgent too, are, sort of out of people's vision, and not right in front of them. And so, we are not doing as well financially as we need to in order to do the work that we need to do.
And I spoke about that, believe it or not, on KPFT 90.1 FM on my show, where I got a lot of pushback from it, where I said all the monies are going to these think tanks and these other folks that don't do a darn thing. They don't. You and I are in the community. We sit down and we talk to people every day. We know where the people's heart's at, and we somehow can never. And we have problems raising money for Politics Done Right, KPFT, for Move to Amend. Yet they send you emails out 10 times a day, and somehow they so we have to refocus people. But we are coming close to the end of the conversation here. Kaitlin, give me a closer. Tell me, what is your expectation for two things? First, Medicare for all, and secondly, let's broaden it to that populist movement that we must attain.
Well, I think that we have to keep fighting for Medicare for all. And right now, the main folks that we need to fight is the Democratic Party, because the leadership of the Democratic Party is not in support of this policy. It took work to even get a Medicare for all position on the hearing about Medicare for all. And Pelosi caved, and then she got lots of credit, but she wasn't originally going to help in that. So we have to hold Democrats who are in office accountable, and we have to be ready and willing to get rid of them if they are not delivering. We have to make them so afraid that that's what they'll do, that they listen to us, because that's their job. And anything less than that, they're not helpful to us. They're in the way. So I really want to see us be strong on that, and not so afraid of Republicans that we're unwilling to call out the Democrats that are actually the first line of the neoliberal corporate agenda right now, that are the ones who are actively fighting us more than Republicans in some ways. And then in terms of the populism, I think that, I think social media is so powerful in that we can talk to each other directly, but we also have to remember that there are lots of people who are not on Twitter who need to hear these stories. And so we need to actually, door knock. We need to do the text campaigns. We need to volunteer. Like I said, I'm still an independent. My plan is to register as a Democrat for this primary. And also my plan is to work on the Bernie Sanders campaign, which, that's a big deal, because one, he doesn't even support Move to Amend yet, and I'm still willing to. And then two, I don't believe in the establishment party, but for the strategic needs of this populist movement that we have to build right now, I am impressed that Dem Enter. I got to give you, and the folks who are working on that strategy, Egberto, you got some folks in Congress. The Green Party was not able to do that. So I think there still needs to be a party, but we also have to be willing.
You know I'm smiling.
but if they screw us, if they thwart us, we can't stick with them, because then they can take us for granted forever until we're dead, and that won't be too far away.
No, I've said that for a long time now, and for all my Greens and all my anarchists and all of those that I hang with, I tell the same story. We are working within a structure, not to go ahead and try to get them to be like us, but for us to ultimately take it over, and that is where we have to put it. Kaitlin Sopoci Belknap, National Director of Move to Amend, a very good friend of mine. Thank you so kindly for telling your story. Thank you so kindly for doing what you do. Please keep doing what you do, because your work is very, very important. You are a hell of a leader. You keep doing what you do.
Thank you so much, Egberto.